Welcome everyone to this webinar on healthy brain aging in Down syndrome. I'd like to introduce Dr. Shahid Zaman, who is the research lead of the Cambridge Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Group, also consultant psychiatrist working with adults with intellectual disabilities within Cambridgeshire. He's also an associate lecturer at the University of Cambridge. And we're here today to speak about the research that we conduct here in Cambridge and also speak a bit more about healthy brain aging and the link between dementia and Down syndrome. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Shahid to begin the talk.
Thank you, Natasha. You can hear me? Yeah. And you can see the slides, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to move to the next slide. Here we are. So I'm going to cover a number of topics, but the main one is relating to dementia, but in the context of brain health in people with Down syndrome, and provide some strategies how we can keep our brain healthy through the aging process. And this applies to everyone. It doesn't matter if you have Down syndrome or not. And also we're going to talk about the research we're doing to address this problem that's been going on for the last decade or so in Cambridge. The condition is a very complicated condition. It will take us quite some time to find a way forward. But all I can say is that great progress has been made over the last 5 to 10 years. And I'll probably share some of that with you, at least in the Q&A. But before we go on, just to show you that this is our most recent members of our group. And as I said, we've been a part of this very big consortium called the ABCDS, which stands for Alzheimer's Biomarker Consortium in Down syndrome. It's based in the US and funded by the US with several labs like ours, where people with Down syndrome have come in who are healthy otherwise and who've been followed up to see how any changes that happen with aging, basically how the health of the brain changes with age. And we'll share some of that with you in a minute as well. I think the most striking fact that we see, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is that if you look at the number of people or prevalence of people who've been diagnosed with dementia and compare that with the general population, this graph shows you on the vertical axis the prevalence or the percentage of people who've been diagnosed, and on the x-axis or the horizontal axis, the age of the person when this diagnosis occurred. As you can see in people in the general population, the figure starts to rise above around about 60, 65. And by the time someone's about 80 or so, it's about 20% of that population. 1 in 5 will have Alzheimer's or dementia. And then if you compare it with people who have Down syndrome, and that's the dotted line, you see the percentage of people goes up in a similar, perhaps a slightly more faster way. But what you get is that the onset of the dementia occurs a lot earlier, by about 20 or so years. And if in people who have intellectual disability, that's the dotted line, you'll see there is a bit of an earlier onset in those people as well. So that's people with learning disabilities, but who don't have Down syndrome. They also have this problem of getting a diagnosis of dementia at a younger age. And you may be wondering why that is. Well, the reason for that is simply down to the genetics. So I'm sure you know that people with Down syndrome have an extra copy of the chromosome 21, which should occur in pairs, but it occurs in in 3 pairs. Oh, sorry, three copies. And one of the things we've learned is that amyloid, the chromosome 21 has a gene called APP, or amyloid precursor protein. And because there's 3 copies of it, that means the gene is going to be copied 3 times, and genes produce proteins, and it's going to produce 3 times the protein that you would get in a normal person. And so what happens, as at least the theory is, that this amyloid, which is thought to be responsible for the cause of Alzheimer's, as you see in that little picture or cartoon on the bottom right, on the left you see, this is obviously seen under the microscope. You see brain cells, which are normal brain cells, neurons. And on the right panel, you see, if you look down the microscope of someone who's got Alzheimer's, you start seeing these what are called deposits of this protein called amyloid. And this comes from the APP gene. So the theory is, at least in people with Down syndrome, because you're getting almost lifelong increased production of APP protein and the products of it, these eventually deposit in the brain and cause the Alzheimer's. Now, you might be asking, well, do you get the same process in people who don't have Down syndrome and who get Alzheimer's? And the answer is yes. So if you look down the microscope of people who don't have Down syndrome but have Alzheimer's, they will also get these deposits of this amyloid protein, or they're called amyloid plaques. Another very important factor that is important is age. So if in the general population, we know, as you saw that, as I showed you that figure, that about 1 in 5 people around about the age of 80 will get the dementia, Alzheimer's dementia, and that's because of age is the biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's. So if we didn't age, then we wouldn't get Alzheimer's. That's the conclusion. And we also know that people with Down syndrome tend to have features that that seem to suggest they age quicker than the average, the general population. Just to let you know a few figures, in the UK, there's approximately 900,000 people who have Alzheimer's disease. So it's a huge health and economic problem in fact, for the world. And there are about 41,000 people with Down syndrome, which is about 4.5% of the population of all the people who have Alzheimer's. But because majority of them, because of the genetics, will eventually develop Alzheimer's, this is obviously a serious problem that we need to pay attention to. There's also another very rare cause of Alzheimer's, which is another genetic form of Alzheimer's. And it's genetic because if you get mutations in the APP gene, which means like you get one small change in the codes of the gene, that causes a similar condition to what you see in people with Down syndrome. But those are very rare. There's only about 9,000 families also in the UK. But the important thing is, it seems that the familial autosomal dominant forms of Alzheimer's disease behave in a very similar way as to what you see in people with Down syndrome. So it's important to get early intervention in there. And by that, it means not just obviously looking for the key signs and symptoms, such as here, most people know that Alzheimer's and dementia is to do with changes in memory, but it can also be changes in mood and behavior, personality change perhaps, and something that might look like depression. And it's known that depression is actually a risk factor for in the general population, as well as people with Down syndrome, of Alzheimer's. And they may have difficulty in doing things that were very good at before, and also they may have some problems with language, such as not being able to understand as well as before, or express themselves as well as before, or even repeating phrases. There may also be other changes, such as change in appetite or sleep disturbances, and even in the ability to walk or gait. Now, in the general population, what has been shown, and this is the good news, is that you can delay the onset of dementia by strategies to do with what you might call lifestyle. So these include regular exercise, social engagement, so keeping the brain active. Sleep and quality of sleep is important. A focus on both diet and mental stimulation, and also reduction of stress. And this is a very big study that's been done in the recent past, which in the general population showed a huge improvement in terms of the onset of the condition. But the other things that to keep in mind is that this study also involved regular medical checkups and providing a structured environment and tailored activities, which are also important. Sorry, just before I go, so the sort of strategies that we're talking about we also mentioned the exercise. So we all know that exercise is important for overall both health and in terms of physical health and mental health and obviously brain function. But the exercise has to be tailored to the individual's both interests and abilities. And it could be walking, swimming, or dancing. But the important thing is to stay and remain active. And in terms of diet, we all talk about diet, everybody does. But that needs to be, I think most people know that, balanced. So it should be rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean protein, avoiding processed food, and focusing on healthy fats, not trans fats, for example, and also paying attention to micronutrients and also supplements such as omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and vitamins. In terms of mental stimulation, I think it's important to encourage activities that challenge the brain, such as jigsaw puzzles or reading or doing some arts and crafts and even enjoying music. And these, again, activities have been shown to help keep cognitive function sharp. So in terms of social engagement, this is again important. It's important to participate in community or have regular meetings with friends and relatives and stay connected. Another very important thing is, especially in people with Downs, is sleep, quality of sleep. We know that about 40 or so % of people have undiagnosed sleep apnea, which means they have breathing difficulties at night, which may go unnoticed. They may not even be snoring, because that's the classical sign where the person stops breathing for a short time and then suddenly wakes up and tries to catch the breath. But the problems with sleep, that sort of sleep apnea, it can cause lots of health problems such as high blood pressure, such as sleepiness and tiredness, and behavioral problems and irritability, and cognition can decline as well. So it can present as someone who's not able to concentrate or focus or remember things as before. So it's really important to be proactive about that and try and to see if there's any evidence of sleep apnea. Stress management, again, this can be done through various techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, or gentle yoga. And a calm and supportive environment is significantly, obviously, reduces the risk. In terms of regular medical checkups, again, in England and Wales, GPs often are advised to do what's called annual health checks. I think that's really important. A lot of people have their thyroid checks, thyroid function checks, but it's also you need a more general medical checkup for any things that can happen to anybody. Because someone with Down syndrome may not be easily able to report those symptoms compared to someone who doesn't have Down syndrome. So these are very important. Having a sort of predictable and supportive environment and having routines and having familiar surroundings also is important. and having activities that someone is really interested in, and according to their abilities, of course. So this is also important. And we already mentioned all the importance of regular exercise and health. So this is a sort of an action plan, and we've got a little sheet we can share with you, which has helps person to sort of make sure that they're doing these things. And I think the hardest thing is breaking old habits, and I think having something like this can help. So just a little bit more about the research, and as you can see, that one of the problems with Alzheimer's is that it can take a very, very long time for it to develop. So I mentioned the protein amyloid. Now that accumulates very slowly over many, many years, but you don't see any clinical manifestations of that until maybe, you know, in the ages I've shown you, between 45 and 55 or above. So what's necessary is to try and to be able to detect that in someone who's comes to clinic, let's say, who outwardly appears to be quite healthy. And there are various techniques that have been developed, and we've used them in our research to try and work out how we can pick up these measures, and these are called biomarkers. One of them could be what's called EEG, electrical recording of the brain, as you can see in the picture. Someone who has those little dots are called electrodes, which measure the electrical activity in the brain. And on the right panel, you see this bright red spot. It's a picture of the brain showing, using a special technique, showing the deposits of amyloid in the brain. And this can be done by doing a scan, what's called a PET scan, using MRI and PET. Of course, some people's cognition may change, so we can do special quizzes which can allow us to pick up changes in memory function, or ability to focus or concentrate, or ability to draw, or language skills. So these are the things we're trying to pick up as early as possible to show that there's something going on in the brain, that perhaps once we know that, we can try and intervene as soon as possible in order to prevent or delay the onset of the condition. And again, to emphasize that we know from the general population that these interventions that I've mentioned above, with healthy living, are also important and have been shown to do that. But we also want to know if there's other maybe pharmacological treatments that we can try to use, but we need to know exactly what the nature of the changes are and when to intervene, and that's what our research is about. So I'll hand it over to Natasha to explain a little bit more about the research. Over to you, Natasha.
Great, thank you. So as we've spoken about already, having memory and thinking problems is more common in people with Down syndrome, and we tend to see this arising around 40 to 50 years old or older. And we do two different types of brain scans for our studies, which is a CT scan and an MRI scan. And we found that there are tiny blobs of proteins called amyloid, and another protein called tau, which, sorry, I think we skipped the slide. If you could go back.
Shall I go back on you?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the one we've done. You're not done. I think this is just this one.
Okay, it's great. So we'll go on to this. So yeah. So in terms of the research that we're doing at the moment, the main study that we're doing is called the ABCDS study. And this is a large international study that's run across sites in the USA, and we're the main site in the UK, and actually in all of Europe. So we are running this study here, which is eligible to everyone in the UK and Ireland. And the main aim of the study is to spot the early signs of Alzheimer's in adults with Down syndrome. And we do several different tests and measures to track this across a long period of time. So we do some neuropsychological tests, as Shahid's already said, like quizzes and puzzles. And these are standardized tests that are often used in Alzheimer's research and intellectual disabilities research. And we obviously do those brain scans, as I mentioned, CT, PET, and MRI, and a physical health check to look for other measures that we can't see physically on a brain scan. And we also test for those proteins that I mentioned through blood processing. But we also run some other studies within the group. So there is the ABATE study, which is in its first early years, essentially testing a vaccine that's very exciting, that we hope to slow the progression of Alzheimer's. And we run some smaller studies, such as a sleep study, looking at the role of sleep, also using brain scans, and an eye study. So this is looking at actually how eye health is implicated in dementia, and it's a different way to image the brain through the eyes. So all recruitment for these studies are ongoing, mostly the ABCDS and the ABATE study, which are the larger scaled studies that we run here in Cambridge. Next slide. So who's actually eligible to get involved in our research? We welcome participants who have Down syndrome and are adults, so 25 years or older, and are accompanied by a parent, caregiver, or legal guardian, because we also do some carers interviews to speak to the carer about their observations and accompany them on the visit. We also run some sibling controls. So this is a smaller cohort, but these are the individuals of the siblings of people with Down syndrome, and also they have to be 25 years or older. So thousands of people are eligible for our study, but obviously there's a challenge in recruiting. So that's what we're trying to combat here by sharing our resources and also speaking about the importance of research and having a diverse population of individuals, so that our research is able to more accurately inform the people that this is actually affecting. So our research is really important, that we get as many people as possible with Down syndrome to come in and take part in these studies and measures. Next slide. So what does a visit in our study actually involve? You get to visit sunny Cambridge, and we provide compensation for all travel, accommodation, and food during the visit. So the visits are usually over 2 or 3 days. So as I said, we do provide accommodation in a hotel. And you get to take part in the different tests in our study. So those cognitive puzzles, as I mentioned, some brain imaging, and the other medical tests. And because this is a longitudinal study, it involves 4 different visits along 5 years. So every person's visit is the exact same, so it's standardized, but we accept people from 25 years or older, as I mentioned. So we do hear quite great feedback from the participants that take part in our research. They really enjoy coming to Cambridge, learning a bit more about their brain and their health, and also meeting the research team. Next slide. So a really important part of my role, and also the ever-evolving field of research, is involving the community that's actually impacted by our research, and also keeping our participants engaged and part of the research process. So recently we've launched a research community advisory group, and this is made up of individuals within a range of the Down syndrome community. So some are participants, family. We've got a retired research nurse who's got lots of experience within the field. And we also have other individuals that aren't part of our research that can essentially inform on what we're doing, their opinions of what we're doing, and helping to shape our research to be more accessible for the community. And we also run newsletters. So we hope that these can be co-written by our community. And we hope to also write some more papers getting our community involved. But our researchers, our newsletters are released seasonally, and we update our community on the activities we're doing, translating what recent research findings we found, and any upcoming activities within Cambridge and in our group. And as you can see in a picture here, that's a picture from our World Down Syndrome Day event this year. So we run these every year on or around World Down Syndrome Day. And this is a really important part of the year for us to connect with the community, to do some fun science activities, to share research posters, and also to deliver exciting talks as well. And this brings me on to the outreach events that we do. So we're trying to work more closely with our local community partners to share information about healthy brain aging in Down syndrome and dementia, so that we can better translate the research and the work that we're doing here for the community to understand and share. We really passionately think that this is a topic that's not spoken about enough, and we'd like to get you to help us spread that message. So if you are interested in getting involved as a community partner, whether that be part of our advisory group or to host us for an outreach event in your community, please email CIDDRG's email, which is down there, or ask for some more information. We are also on Facebook, and we hope to release a website as well. So get in touch that way. And then here's a QR code if you or someone you know are interested in our studies. So you can scan this QR code, which will take you to a Google form where you can fill out some information, so that we can get in touch and share some information about our studies or answer any questions that you might have. Or you can email us directly at CIDDRG at medschool.cam.ac.uk for more information. And I think the last slide is another nice picture of our team, and just reiterating the email. If you've got any more inquiries or questions, then please don't hesitate to be in touch.